course, we are monitoring all the jury deliberations and developments in Kenosha, Wisconsin, as we await a verdict going into the third day. Right now, though, we're being joined by Congressman Bryan Steil, who represents that district. Congressman, good to see you. Here at Live Now from Fox, we have been following every development in the courtroom. No doubt you have. Are you concerned, though, whatever the verdict might be, about reaction and unrest there in Kenosha?
I've been speaking with local law enforcement officials and making sure that we have the resources to establish public safety in the community of Kenosha. I feel confident and also remain optimistic that people are going to be able to receive the news that the jury will come out with and maintain public safety, exercise their First Amendment right, but not delve into the criminal behavior that we saw play out in the streets of Kenosha last summer. What became so clear is last summer, local officials, the governor, and others allowed criminal behavior to play out in the streets of Kenosha rather than demanding and establishing public safety in our community.
And Congressman, is the community of Kenosha still reeling from all of that last year?
Yeah, I walked the 4th of July parade route. There are still buildings that have boards on their doors. One that is incredibly memorable that says, "Please don't burn this building," with an arrow pointing above, because families lived above the business downtown. Overall, Kenosha's really come back. It's a community of family-loving people, hardworking people that have really come together and rallied after an incredibly challenging environment that it was put upon the city. Ultimately, though, I do believe that the city is going to come back stronger than ever before.
And Congressman, we have reached out to the mayor of Kenosha, obviously yourself as well in your office, and Governor Evers. We've also gotten a statement in from the Kenosha Police and the Kenosha Sheriff's Department saying, they want citizens to go about their everyday lives. They're not instituting road closures or curfews. We've been showing live looks outside of the courthouse, small groups of protesters, but hopefully nothing like we saw in the aftermath of the Jacob Blake shooting. Have you talked to your constituents on the ground? What are they saying?
I've talked to a lot of people in the community of Kenosha, as well as the sheriff and other local law enforcement officers. They believe that they have the resources that are required to maintain public safety. I think there's a really significant lesson learned. If we go back to last summer, there was an absolute lack of resources provided to the community of Kenosha that allowed law enforcement to be overwhelmed by criminals in the streets. And we saw bad go to worse, which is exactly what played out and is playing out on TV screens as we analyze this specific court case. None of this should have occurred in the first place. There was an opportunity to provide the community of Kenosha sufficient resources. The governor failed to act, and as a result, bad went to worse. There was destruction of property, there was serious bodily injury, and ultimately there was a loss of life. This never should have occurred in the first place.
And Congressman, what do you make, though, of all the preconceived notions, especially in the media about, the actions of Kyle Rittenhouse? Was this, did it have, racial implications because of the shooting of Jacob Blake? It's spurring conversations of, should vigilante justice be tolerated on the streets of American cities? Do you think most Americans' minds are made up even before the verdict?
The jury is going to ultimately reach their decision, but what's so absolutely critical is none of this should have occurred in the first place. None of these individuals should have been on the street, and they wouldn't have been there had sufficient resources been provided to the community of Kenosha. But what we saw play out last summer was mayors, governors, and liberals across the United States put forward a defund the police agenda, an anti-police agenda. And when you don't stand with the men and women of local law enforcement to allow them to reestablish public safety, situations get out of hand. Kenosha experienced this firsthand, and we don't want Kenosha or any city to ever experience this again.
Congressman, have you been in touch at all with, relatives of Kyle Rittenhouse or, members, of the prosecution or the defense? Do you know these individuals personally?
I haven't spoken with them directly, but I've spoken with many members of the community who are adamant that we never want to see the destruction that Kenosha experienced to ever occur again in Kenosha or any city in the United States of America.
And what do you make of, especially from some of your, Republican colleagues, your, Democratic colleagues on the other side of the aisle, who have made statements to the press, characterizing Kyle Rittenhouse, especially we heard from President Biden referring to Kyle Rittenhouse early on, right after this happened, as a white supremacist. We tried to get a statement from White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki about, if those comments were appropriate. They were not going to comment on the pending trial. Is all of this very helpful?
I don't think it's helpful for anybody to comment on the pending trial, in particular while the jury is in the process of deliberations. What's so essential is that we maintain public safety in the community of Kenosha. I will advocate for anybody's First Amendment right. People should be able to express themselves freely and appropriately. But what's so essential is that we draw a bright line between your First Amendment right to express yourself and criminal behavior. What we saw play out last summer in the community of Kenosha was criminal behavior that needed to be terminated immediately. We needed public safety immediately, and the governor failed to act.
And, whatever the verdict might be, possibly tomorrow or the next day, what do you hope for the community of Kenosha moving forward? Do you hope that they can finally get past this? We've been showing rallies and remarks from activists about healing Kenosha. What's your message to them?
When I speak to folks in the community of Kenosha, and it is a absolutely terrific city, it's family-centered, it's hardworking people. People want to come back together and rebuild Kenosha stronger than ever before. I'm optimistic that that's possible. We saw the absolute most difficult period of time last summer. We've come a long way since then, and I think we will continue to rebuild the community of Kenosha and truly make it better than it ever has been before.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time, Congressman. We'll definitely be speaking with you again. This story is not going anywhere. Have a great night.
Thank you.